Hi, this is Mashnu, and here is a short review of today's game, a 45 minutes game that I played at chess.com on the live section. And I was playing against a player whose username is max242204, rated above 1900. I was playing white and I opened with d4 and he played the Dutch defense, f5. I continue with c4, occupying the center, knight f6, knight c3, g6, that's the Leningrad variation, and the best way to fight the Leningrad is to play g3 and bishop g2. So that's what I did after bishop g7, bishop g2, and here he surprised me by playing c5. I had never seen this move and it looks actually quite good. The Dutch Leningrad is a dark square defense, meaning that this bishop is very important on this diagonal, so with c5 he has more influence on these dark squares. And I didn't want to take on c5, because if I do that, then well, I do win a pawn here, but I give up the center, and I didn't want to do that. So another option would be to advance the pawn to d5. But the drawback of that is that this diagonal for this dark square bishop, it becomes very attractive for black. So that's the reason why, after thinking for a few minutes, I decided to play a more passive move, but it's a very solid move, e3. He castled kingside. I continued developing my pieces, knight to f3. And now, instead of playing e6 and d5 or knight to c6 or knight to a6, he played knight to e4 here. And again, I was a bit surprised. I didn't want to take on e4 right now. I thought, well, perhaps the best way to play this is simply to castle kingside, have king safety before doing anything in the center. He continued now with knight to c6, and now I took on e4. He took back, and now I played knight to g5. So this e4 pawn now is going to fall. On the other hand, my d4 pawn is weak. It's attacked 3 times, only defended twice. So it's going to be a trade of pawns. Now he didn't take immediately on d4. He played e6 now. And now I took the pawn on e4. And after this, he took on d4, I took back, and he took then with the knight. Now e6, this move that he did, is meant to be able to play d5. That's his idea. Because if we look at the pawn structure, I have 2 of what they call pawn islands, so 2 groups of pawns. And black has 3 pawn islands, one here, and one here on the king side. Now the main rule is that the more pawn islands you have, the more weaknesses you have. And we can see that clearly in black's position, that d6 is a weak square. d7 could become later a weak pawn. The other side of this is that black has the half-open f-file and a half-open c-file, but I don't see a clear way to use those open files right now. I continued my game with bishop to e3, attacking the knight twice, and he retreated to c6. And at this point I started looking at this square d6. I want to have a knight there. Knight d6, perhaps it was possible to play right now, but b2 is hanging as well. So I decided to continue with bishop to c5 first, attacking the rook. If the rook goes to f7, I'm sorry, and then I play knight to d6, attacking the rook, and the rook has almost nowhere to go. He played rook to f5, so now I cannot play knight to d6 because the bishop on c5 hangs. And my pawn on b2 is also hanging, so the next move is not very difficult to find. Bishop to a3, defending b2 and preparing to play knight to d6. If I can play knight to d6 and prevent this d5 pawn advance, then I'll have a better position, because black's only chance to equalize again is to play d5, to fight for the center and have the development of his pieces arranged again. Actually, black is playing actively before finishing his development, and that's why I think that already white has a better position. My pieces are better developed. It's easier for me to activate the rooks as well. And black, if you look at the queen side of black, it's just two passive pieces there. But still, he tried to find something. He played rook to a5, threatening rook takes bishop, and after I retake, then my rook on a1 is hanging. So I played rook to b1, and now he took his chance to play d5. So I didn't manage to prevent this d5 move. So what to do now? My knight is attacked. I could take on d5, but then he probably would retake with a rook. So instead of that, I did some calculation and decided that playing the knight to c5 right now was a good idea, because I'm going to regain that pawn on c4. He took now on c4, and here I traded queens, and I actually regret doing that, because a much better idea, a better continuation would be to play bishop takes c6, removing the defender of the black queen, so black is forced to trade queens himself, and that gives me a very active rook. And after b takes c6, I can play rook to d8 check, king f7, and now this bishop on c8 is pinned. He cannot go to b7 defending his rook, because I have the knight and then that takes the bishop. So this would have been a very beautiful variation for me, but I unfortunately didn't choose for that. I took the queen and he took again, and now I played rook f to c1, wanting to regain this this pawn on c4. He cannot defend it by playing b5, because the rook on a8 hangs here. So he played c3. I continued with bishop to b4. He took my pawn on a2, and I took the pawn on c3. So this means that at the moment I am a pawn behind. I didn't manage to regain the pawn, but on the other hand, still I'm ahead in development. His pieces are not active. Three of his 5 pieces are on the back rank still, while I have 2 nice bishops, a knight that is also active, and my rooks can become active easily. Here he took on c3. I took back with a rook, and now he played knight to c6. Still, I was confident here about my position because of the piece activity. That's one of the most important things, to get your pieces active. That's more important than material gaining. I played rook to b3 now, threatening to take on b7, and he played knight to a5, attacking my rook and defending b7. So then I went back with my rook to d3 on the open file, ready to enter on d8. He saw that I wanted to go with my rook to d8, so he played king to f7 to avoid the check. But still, rook d8 is a good move, because with one piece, with this rook, I paralyze these 2 pieces. So in fact, I'm playing with 2 light pieces against 1 light piece. Rook b8 was played now, and another characteristic here in the position is this weakness on e6. I played bishop h3, and in fact this pawn on e6 is pinned. He cannot advance the pawn because then I take the bishop on c8. So he played b6 now, accepting that he would lose this this pawn on e6. Notice also how unhappy this rook is on a2. This rook cannot go anywhere, not to a4, not to a3, not to a1, not to b2. So this is a very bad piece there on a2. Again, actually the theme of this game is piece activity and finding the right square for your pieces. I took now the pawn on e6, knight takes e6. He played now h6 to prevent knight g5 check, but still I can simply remove my knight from here. Knight to d4 was played, and now c8 is attacked twice. He cannot defend it one more time, so he's going to lose now the exchange, and that's what happened. He played bishop takes h3, rook takes b8. And now I have a very nice position. I only need to be careful about the back rank, because there is a possible back rank mate if this rook leaves the first rank. But that's just something to be careful about. Now king to f6. I played f4. The idea of f4 is controlling all the squares around the king. So I'm ready to prevent actually his king from becoming more active in the center. And also I can activate my own king with king f2, king e3 eventually. Now he played rook to a4, attacking the knight. I played b4, blocking that line, attacking his knight on a5. He played knight to c4, and I went rook to c1, attacking the knight again. This is a little tactic, because I'm giving this b4 pawn, but I'm winning it back immediately. After rook takes b4, I played knight to c6, fork on the rook and the pawn on a7. He defends it with rook to a4, but still I simply take on a7 because the rook is overloaded. He must defend the pawn and the knight at the same time. So here, if he would take back on a7, I take his knight. So instead of that, he played bishop to d7, and I continue with. Actually, bishop d7 is a nice move because it prevents my knight from returning. So this knight is not trapped because it can go to c8 still. And I'm attacking his b6 pawn. He defended it with rook to b4. Now rook d1 attacks the bishop. Bishop takes on c8. Rook takes c8. And we go slowly towards an endgame that is much better for white because of these two strong rooks and a pawn majority on the king side. He played b5 now. I continue with g4, and here I had to be careful because I saw that he could play knight to e3, but that's not really dangerous because if he does this, then I give a check on c6. If the king goes to the e file, then I have rook e1 pinning the knight. And if the king goes to f7, I can play rook a1, for example, and he cannot really take here because then I have a mate in 2 with check here and then mating him on the back rank. So that means that I don't need to be worried about this knight move, knight e3, forking my rook and the pawn on g4. So that's why I could play g4 safely. I had to do some calculation. By the way, I had used at this point about 30 minutes out of the total of 45, and my opponent had used, well, I think something like 12 or 13 minutes only. So it was playing very fast, and this is, well, I don't really understand it. I mean, if you accept the challenge of 45 minutes, why are you only using 15 minutes at the most for the whole game? And he's getting a worst endgame because it simply didn't take the time to think properly about the position. Like the game continued with rook a4, rook c6 check, king e7, and now f5. I'm creating a pass pawn. G takes, rook a8, and the h6 pawn is falling now. Rook takes h6, rook c8 played. He still has this b pawn. This b pawn is actually the only hope for him to save the game, but in fact it's he's already lost here. I played f6 check, king e6, rook e1 check, king f5, f7. Now rook to f8, rook f1 check, king e5, rook to g6, threatening rook to g8, of course. So he plays knight to d6, attacking my pawn on f7 one more time. Now I do have a nice check on e1. Rook e1 check. If the king goes to f5, then I take the knight. So he has to go to d5, and now I have a check on d1, and the knight is falling anyway. King to c5, rook takes knight, rook takes pawn, and here actually he should have resigned, but he didn't. He hoped that with the support of his king he could form some threats with that with the pawn, but it's actually hopeless. I played h5. I'm going to show you a bit fast the rest of the game. Rook g7 check, king f2, another check, and I'm coming closer to the rook. He advances now the pawn. I continue advancing my pawn. He plays b3. I go forward with my king. The rook must move. And now I went to the back rank, ready to play a rook to b8 and then try to capture the b pawn. He gave a check. I went to h7, b2, rook b1, king c4, now the other rook to b8, and now it's actually all over. If he plays king to c3, I simply take on b2, and then there is a trade, and I have a winning pawn here. He played king to d5, and I simply took here. Now this is a moment when he really should have resigned, but he didn't. He continued playing, and I'm going to show you very fast what happened, because this is actually not very interesting. It's a very simple way to win this game. Advance this pawn, and even here, that should be the final position of the game. He continued, and then I thought, you know what, I'm not going to checkmate you promoting with the queen. If you refuse to resign, then I'm going to give a beautiful checkmate with a knight and a rook, and that's what happened. I came closer, and in this position, if he goes to a6, then this is a very beautiful mate pattern. Well, he didn't. He went to a8, and then it's checkmate on b8. Alright, so that's today's game. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that you also see how important it is to activate your pieces, to develop your pieces, and before you look for any attack or any tactic, simply get your pieces into play, get your king safe, control the center. All those basic ideas were actually decisive in this game. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.